I do two different versions of this. I do like the during the week at home for us version, and then of course I do the company magical meatloaf. And the company magical meatloaf is infused with mozzarella cheese and bacon. So this comes from my grandmother Marie, her recipe box, or at least the base of it comes from her. But just about everything I've learned how to make came from, that influence. Both of my grandmothers were amazing cooks. So I'm the kind of person who likes to gather all my ingredients and get everything together before I start cooking. And it works out well because, making a meatloaf can be a little time consuming. I'm also, I'm one of those people that cooks 3 or 4 meals on Sundays so that we have it for throughout the week. And I'll do a lot of ingredients for multiple meals and maybe just put them aside already pre. So I don't know how much you can actually see of the counter, but I basically have all the
See any
ingredients.
part of the counter, Anthony?
I'm sorry.
I said, I don't see any part of the counter.
So I'm going to hold up a little bit. This is some of the bacon that's already prepared, ripped up to go into the meatloaf itself, of course, with the eggs that I need. Um, this is the plate that I cooked the bacon on. I removed all of the paper toweling, and because we need two versions, some of the bacon has already been used. This will be used to cap off later. This is my ripped up Italian bread. These are some onions and a little bit of garlic. I use marinara sauce, one of my sauces, which you'll see here. But crushed tomatoes or even ketchup can be used depending on your taste preferences.
Do you make your own marinara sauce?
Oh my God, yes.
Okay.
My
Now, of
grandmother
course
would
he does.
posthumously slap me up the back of the head with a wooden spoon if I didn't. Yeah. And there's always, at least 4 or 5 Tupperware of sauce in the freezer because I make a mother sauce whenever I'm making one so that it's much easier. So now I'm just gonna chop up one onion or one half of the onion to kind of show you the size and consistency that I like. When I'm making the company meatloaf, I tend to slice the onions up a lot smaller than I do for just us. We're all onion lovers in this household. So I basically split the onion in half, slice it across the width a bunch of times, and then across again to get little sections. I already pre-soaked the first piece of Italian bread in milk, and so that it's already in there with my meatloaf. Add the onions, and basically add all of the wet ingredients at first. So I will go with my 2 eggs. And then my marinara sauce, which for this is about 2/3 a cup. Um, I don't measure out fully because what I like to do is add a little extra bread at the end to soak up the moisture to even out the consistency of the meatloaf. We
Hey,
are
Anthony,
also
would you mind talking a little bit about the consistency of what the meatloaf kind of should feel like before you add that extra layer on top? Because I think that's a hard thing for people to really get what that feels like.
And it's important in the finished product.
It is.
it is very important in the finished product. So, when you're adding your additional bread, that's where you need the consistency to be because you don't want any actual pieces of bread because those will burn inside the meatloaf and change the flavor. So you want the bread completely immersed into the meatloaf mixture. And I basically say, as long as I can pick it up and it sticks to my hand, that's the consistency that I'm looking for. And I'll show you that.
That's an awesome method. Wow.
Yeah, if it's dripping off your hand, add more bread and mix it, mix it, mix it. You don't want any chunks of bread because that will change the flavor of it. I'm holding Worcestershire sauce. We're Worcestershire lovers in this house, so I'm going to do about 4 shakes of this. If you're not a big fan of Worcestershire sauce, you don't need to use it at all. Or, if you want to do just 2 little squirts to get it. Um, and then and then you start mixing.
You mix it with your hands?
I am mixing with my hands. Yes, I washed right before we came on air. So, the like I said, the piece of Italian bread with the that was soaked in the milk is in there first. We're going to add the dry bread in a little while. At this point, if you can see, as I'm holding it up, some of it is dripping off. So I'm not going to need to add too much bread to this to get the consistency that I'm looking for. But also, for those of us, for all of us, working with onions can be interesting. For those of us that are blind, sometimes they don't always come all the way apart. So this is a good way to squeeze and make sure that your onion is evenly
Mm,
distributed throughout the mixture as well.
No
Um,
big pieces.
the pieces, yeah.
yeah.
So not only are you squeezing to mix everything together, but you're also squeezing to make sure that the onions, are coming apart, if they weren't fully, if they weren't fully loosened when you cut them, and also to make sure that you're evenly distributing them. So from that point, and let me give you a kind of a look. Can you guys see that?
Hold the audio now unmuted.
All right. I'm going to assume that you guys could. And that's when I add my salt, pepper, and oregano, which I already pre-mixed. And then again, just the key is to mix it for a good 5 minutes at least to make sure that you have it even, all of your spicing, your Worcestershire, your onions, and of course that the bread is fully immersed throughout the meat mixture. And you might see I am pulling apart a few of the stubborn pieces of onion while I am doing this. So at this point, that's when I will start to add the rest of my Italian bread into the mix. And again, just squeezing it through my fingers, really getting it all in there. And this is the bread is soaking up the consistency of the egg. And the egg you use to kind of bind it all together. And the ketchup or crushed tomatoes or marinara sauce, depending on what you use. I do find though that with the marinara sauce, and a little bit of extra garlic really puts a kick to this, especially
Mm.
with the bacon and the mozzarella. And as you probably saw, and I'll show it again when we take out the finished product, I keep a little bit of sauce to drizzle across the top once it's finished. So, 2/3 of a cup is what I put into the meatloaf itself, and then have about a third a cup to pour over the finished product. And, you usually take meatloaf out and let it sit for about 15 minutes before you start serving it. So the sauce will kind of immerse itself into the loaf, and it really hits a nice flavoring to it.
Well, I don't know if I could leave mine sit up 15 minutes before I got into it.
But a lot of things are that way. You need to let them sit for a little bit because it really does soak in the flavors.
No.
And some things are better the next day, even because it soaks those flavors.
I have a question.
Meatloaf is definitely better the next day. Lasagna, all of those kind of dishes.
Mhm.
When you put
Meatloaf is an awful lot like stew and chili. You can
Yeah.
add what you like to it, sort of, right?
Yep. I know a lot of people that like to add red parsley flakes to it. Once you've got bacon and mozzarella going, with the marinara sauce, I think that's all the flavoring it needs personally. And I have never heard anything other than, thanking God for having the experience of my meatloaf. I must be doing something right. I don't like this consistency, so I'm going to add a little bit more bread.
I'm so glad you're talking about working with your hands. We do talk about that a lot on the Cooking Without Looking TV show because, I think all chefs cook with their hands. And I know Regina Mitchell, who's a chef, told us that. And I think she did that before she couldn't see well. And that was really profound because it's even more important when you can't see.
Absolutely. When I was slicing the onion, I slide my thumb and my forefinger back as I'm cutting
Mm-hmm.
along the, you have to be very careful. And a lot of people wear the steel cage gloves and so on and so forth. But I need to feel.
Mm-hmm.
In my grandmother's kitchen, you started with cutting bread and grating cheese at 3, 4 years old. I've been, cooking with my hands my entire life, and you
Yeah.
get the feel. And that's what I was saying about the ingredients as well. I don't really measure anything out.
Yeah.
I know in the palm of my hand what a teaspoon feels like.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been cooking, like I said, since I'm 3 years old. So I don't really need to use a lot of tools. And I clean as I cook. So, and,
Mm-hmm.
having this many bowls on the counter is a rarity. It almost never happens. Because I clean and use the same utensils and bowls
Yeah.
as I'm cooking. So for us, I am going to sprinkle just a little bit more Worcestershire because I can smell as well. And
And I'm going to give a little tip on that for people who maybe aren't as comfortable with just shaking that bottle or the spices. I always keep I have a little set of little measuring cups here, um, different sizes. And I tend to, I'll pour stuff into my little one, and I'll pour something into like the quarter cup one just so that I can kind of gauge, okay, how much is that?
a standard shot size glass for liquids is a tablespoon.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a little like milk pitcher that you put out with a coffee service,
Yep.
and that's a quarter of a cup. So, there are lots of tips and tricks.
Yeah.
And whenever I use something new, a spice or like a something like a Worcestershire
Mm-hmm.
sauce, I just discovered Saucy Susan, which is amazing. I'll just stand over the sink and pour it over my hand so I get a feel for how much is coming out.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so this is what it should look like when you have your breading and everything thoroughly um, mixed within the mixture.
A nice smooth consistency.
Yeah, and so I'm going to take a chunk and show you what I mean. It's not falling off my hands. That's what you
Okay.
want. But it is extremely moist because you're going to lose, the bread is going to soak up. You're going to lose some of that moisture consistency. That's part of the reason why we cover it with foil until the last 15 minutes as well, so that you don't lose all of the moisture and end up with a hard baked.
That helps it steam.
Yeah. So at this point, I try to flatten it to the bowl as much as possible. And then, as you can see, these are my ripped up bacon strip pieces. And I just spread them out as evenly as I can across the top of the mixture. And then you're going to do one more really good mix to get the bacon really infused all the way through there.
You can still feel the bacon as chunks in there, right?
Yeah.
I thought so, yeah.
And depending on how you do, like I said, the folks in this house, we love onion. So, if you have larger pieces of onion, you'll feel those as well.
You don't saute your onions before you put it in your meatloaf, so it'll be nice
I
and soft?
I don't know. Some people do. They caramelize it and throw it in. It's just an extra step, and I have found over the years that it doesn't really do anything as far as the flavoring is concerned.
Really? Hmm.
All right. So now we're going to build the meatloaf itself. There is one baking, and the alarm is going to go off to let me know pretty soon. So I'm actually going to transfer. I'm using just a cookie sheet with aluminum foil on it.
Okay.
Got the other pieces of onion. That's why it fell. All right. I'm going to use the cookie sheet to build it and then transfer it over when the other meatloaf is done, and I take it out and the pan cools down enough.
You
And
got a special meatloaf pan.
yes. Well, honestly, I have a big long Pyrex because
Yeah.
if I'm making it, I'm making a couple of days worth. He's taking some for lunch. I'm making
Yeah.
meatloaf sandwiches. You want to take a little bit more than half the mixture to build the base. And I'm actually gonna move this out of the way so you guys can see. And it's exactly what you think it is. It's the base of the meatloaf. So you want to build it out log style. And as you can see by the malleableness of it, it is pretty moist. But it's not, it's not we want it at this point where it's not falling apart or melting away from the shape.
When you put it in a shape, it needs to stay that way, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so after I build the base, I then put a divot pocket all the way across and a couple of little divot pockets along the side, and that is for the mozzarella cheese.
Ah.
Basically, it's going to be like a log of mozzarella inside that's going to be nice and gooey when you cut into the meatloaf.
Oh, that's kind of interesting. I've
It
never had
sounds
anything like that.
delicious.
Here is where I'm
Yeah.
skimping a little bit. I made 1 pound of bacon for both meatloafs. And if you look at the recipe, it's 2 pounds of meat to 1 pound of bacon. So instead of doing a layer, here I would put a layer of bacon on the bottom half and then build the top half around it. But I'm not doing that today because bacon is expensive and
Isn't
honestly,
it?
I meant to get back to the store and didn't, and I wasn't going to do an order for just 1 pound of bacon. So at that point, we're going to take the rest of the meat and layer it across the top of our loaf, covering all of what would be the layered bacon as well as all of the cheese, thickening up the loaf as well. And then I kind of smooth it out and rebuild the shape to make sure that you have a consistent thickness throughout the meat because you don't really have a way of testing the inside. You got going by the thermometer and by the feel of it.
Right.
So if your meatloaf is not a consistent thickness and width, then it's not going to cook evenly and you'll get some pieces that might be undercooked in the center.
Do
And
you use a meat thermometer?
I do.
Okay.
I do use a meat thermometer. And I take the foil off 15 minutes beforehand to give it that nice crunchy texture on the outside. So
Yeah.
by feel, I'm gonna hold it up. By feel, it feels pretty consistently thick and wide. Then I take whatever I have left from the bag of mozzarella and I press it along the top of the meatloaf.
You just sprinkle it all over, or do you put it in a confined area?
No, I just sprinkle it all along the top of the meatloaf and then gently press it into the meat itself. Gently press, because if you press too hard, then you're going to change the consistency of the loaf.
Right.
And just to make sure, I file along the sides of it to make sure I didn't press it down too much. And then I take the last few strips of bacon and layer it over the top of the cheese. Like I said, I would usually have a little more bacon, but we're going to be meatloaf for a while here. I'm actually having people over on Saturday to enjoy some of this meatloaf.
You'll have to let them watch a copy of the show too.
Absolutely. And voila, the loaf is actually ready to go in the oven. Computer, how much time left on the timer?
There are no timers set.
Computer, what time is it? Computer, what time is it?
The time is 3:26 p.m.
Okay. Well, 4 minutes, the alarm would go off. What else do you want me to talk about, Sylvia?
I don't know.
Do you cook over or do you work over the top of a tray by any chance?
Say that again, Alan?
Do you work over a tray so that
No.
when you spill, okay, okay. I kind of
Um,
like to work over a tray when I'm measuring things, especially.
I
You
work on
just
a
work in a
tray when
designated kind of area. And I think that's what you said. You have everything kind of in an area.
Yeah.
yeah, so we have a lip guard on the other side of this, so I can just move it. I can just use a rag and push everything into the lip guard. When I'm cutting vegetables, I use a tray, so that way they don't go rolling off.
Oh, that's good.
Maybe there are some audience members who have a question,
Yeah.
comment.
Yeah.
And me, honestly, while making this, I'd be sipping on wine, listening to Sinatra or Dean Martin.
Awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
And cleaning. I clean as I go.
That is a great thing. And I do that too. I do that too because
Right.
it's just, it really keeps you organized and you're not worried about like, you don't knock something over because you've already put, you finished it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
And
put stuff away as I go. Yeah.
we have
And
a
if you-
question from Alexandria Brito. Welcome, Alexandria.
Hello, hello. Can you guys hear me okay?
Hi.
Yes.
Oh, great. No, love the recipe. Thank you. I'll definitely try it out. But my question is, when cutting, do you just use your knife or do you have any preferred choppers or recommended choppers, um, when
Um,
cutting up vegetables?
no. And honestly, I would say anybody who's new to blindness or new to cooking should probably there's like cutting guards and
Mhm.
all different kinds of gloves and mini choppers. If you're not used to cooking, I would definitely recommend it. But I lost my sight 9.5 years ago, and I've been cooking my entire life. So, the skill set is there.
Yeah, no,
Um,
no, definitely. I've been
but I
cooking
do
for over
use
30 years. Yeah.
I do use the Ninja a lot for for cutting up bigger things or um when pretzels go stale, I'll turn them into like a breadcrumb mixture and
Yeah.
things like that.
And
Oh,
I use
perfect.
a mini chopper and a food processor, especially if I'm going to do a ton of cutting. I think Anthony's probably like me. There's just something cathartic about cutting.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've
Yeah,
been
once you
cooking for
get
over
into the
30
rhythm, it's
years.
bang, bang,
Yeah.
bang, 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 and like I said, I follow along with my
Yeah.
fingers. I would not suggest that to anyone who is not used to cutting.
Yeah.
Right.
We've got another question here from Paul Howard or Fashandra Howard. So it's one of you guys or both, right? Paul?
Hold the
Hi,
audio now
Renee.
muted.
Hey, Fashandra.
And Paul is here, and so are the girls, Orla and Irene. But what I wanted to ask, we came on a little late, so I didn't get the entire recipe, but I know I will get it. I want to know if you could substitute, like with regular meatloaf, substitute the beef for turkey, ground turkey,
Yes.
or chicken with
So
and then use all the other things.
absolutely. The meatloaf I'm actually making today is half
Notice
ground
Meatloaf
beef and
focus
half
mode will
turkey.
lower your hand in 8 seconds.
I couldn't hear because his computer was talking. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I
And
said the
stop
meatloaf I'm
over.
making today is actually half ground beef, half turkey.
Oh, okay, awesome. I've done that before
Yeah,
too.
it does change the turkey does change the consistency a little bit. So you
Mm-hmm.
definitely all the things Anthony talked about with making the consistency right really apply when you add that different meat.
Yeah, that's why you saw so much bread.
Yeah.
Turkey is much more moist.
Yeah.
So, I use extra bread in this one. I've done it with a mixture of ground pork as well,
Mm-hmm.
a veal. I've done a ground pork, ground beef and veal as well. And the flavors are different, and it's
Yeah,
It's
I was going to ask if it
nachos.
changed the flavor. I imagine it does.
Yeah.
You don't just taste Worcestershire.
No,
Mhm.
no. It done right, you don't really taste the Worcestershire. The Worcestershire brings out the flavor of the Montreal mix a little bit more. And then of course the bacon fat that's mixing within the meatloaf. But I think it is time. I'm going to turn my oven off. I would usually leave it sitting for a good 10 to 15 minutes in the oven
Mhm.
itself. But I'm going to put it back in the oven tonight for our meal. So I'll show you, drizzle the rest of the sauce over it.
Mark Thomas has a question for you, Anthony.
All right.
So what do you do for time and temp for cooking?
So temperature is 475. I always put it on for 50 minutes. Pull uh, at about 40 minutes, I pull the computer stop. See, it said there was no timer, but there was. Um, I pull the foil off, and then at the 50 mark, that's when I start testing with both the fork and the meat thermometer. But like I said, I was not cooking this completely through because we're going to use this for dinner tonight.
And
Uh,
that's with 2 pounds of meat?
this is 2 pounds of meat.
That's higher than I would I normally cook it, but I like that because you cover it with foil and then you can get the nice crispy on the top when
Yeah.
you're done.
Yep. And like I said, you save that little extra bit. I wouldn't do it with ketchup, but if you're using, where did I see? This is why I clean as I go.
Lost the
Um,
marinara sauce.
yeah, I wouldn't do it with ketchup, but if you're using marinara sauce or crushed tomatoes, um, and again, it's hot, but I'm used to it, and I just kind of spread it out along the top for a little bit of extra flavoring.
So, Anthony, to Mark's point about you cooking it at 475, I only recently discovered about cooking over 400 and over. And I'm telling you what, it changes things. Things are better.
It does because you
It
get a more
does.
thorough, consistent cooking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And you get less of that, spots of it being a little bit more cooked
Mhm.
than other spots. You just get a more even, thorough cook.
You do.
Oh. So I'm going to hold up the finished product one more time. This went quicker than I thought.
Yeah.
You've done very well.